Awesome, thank you. All right, it's 10 o'clock, so I'm going to get started here. I am excited to tell you about the Plants Grant Partnerships for Local Agriculture and Nutrition Transformation in Schools. My name is Emily Becker, and I am the Education Program Coordinator with Rural Cap Grow. And online is my partner, Marcy McGill. Marcy, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My name is Marcy, and I'm the Senior Director of Student Nutrition for Anchorage School District.
Awesome. So Rural Cap is one of 3 organizations that are partnering with the Anchorage School District. So okay. Rural Cap is one. We are focused on education and outreach. The other 2 organizations are the Alaska Food Co. and Copper River Seafoods, which are obviously food organizations working on putting local foods into the schools. So the Rural Cap mission is to improve the lives of low-income Alaskans, and the Anchorage School District is educating students for success in life. All right, so let's get started. And this is a picture of the standard ASD lunch that most children receive right now. You can see there's an overwrap here, and she's also holding a banana underneath there. And I just, not asking for any thoughts out loud, but I just want you to think about how that food, what it makes you think of, what your thoughts are. So just hold that in your head. And then the next picture here is a goal that we're moving towards. So some students are now receiving this kind of lunch, and just think about maybe the differences in your approach or what you're thinking of when you see that plate of food. Okay, so let's go, and Marcy, I'll turn it over to you to talk about the grant.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, I am thrilled to really be a part of this conversation and just connect with food advocates and food system advocates across the state of Alaska. So thanks, Emily, for the invite to be a part of this. So the Plants Grant really is a first step in our transformation. So it's a leverage point. A little bit of our why is we're wanting to align ourselves and become more or recognized to be more a part of the education environment. Our tagline is fueling student success. In order to do that, students have to eat. They have to have access to food, and they have to want to access the food. And so 2.5 years ago, when I became the senior director of the department, I took the role with that in mind. I did not want to continue the overwrap meals. In fact, I've had my eye on ASD student nutrition for about 15 years when our boys were in the district. So the one thing that really attracted me to this grant was the word transformation, because we were already underway with transforming how we serve food. And so that sets the stage for menu expansion, improved quality for sure, having the students increase their flexing their muscle of choice, and really demonstrating what a healthy plate can look like. So really traditional service, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Transforming how we serve food really needed to happen before we transform how we produce food. So we were honored to be one of 8 across the nation to receive the Plants Grant. And so we're a part of a cohort that really reflects from Maine, of course, to Anchorage across the nation. So we're honored to be a part of this transformation and how we align ourselves more with the food system. We are the largest school district in the state of Alaska. of course, and I would argue to say that we serve the most people every day. So we have a big impact in the food system with our monetary impact as well as our education impact. Um, all right, so some of the activities that we are engaging in really focus in about, let's see, 5 different areas. And we're looking in the area of transforming our menu, how we procure food, really focusing more on local agriculture. And we can define that as um, uh, the state of Alaska for sure. But also we have to consider the Pacific Northwest because as we all know, 95% of our food comes in on the barge. And so we're held hostage to that, so to speak. But that's why we're talking about this right now. We come together. So the project goals for sure are increasing our local sourcing. We do currently source barley, beef when we can, raw beef, sustainable proteins, intact carbohydrates such as barley and wheat, um, potatoes and carrots from the valley. But we're looking to increase that. And then also increase our scratch cooked capacity. And to represent more cultural diversity, being that we have a very diverse, one of the most diverse school districts in the nation as well. Right now, we have about 32% of our menu items that is made from scratch in our central kitchen facility. And I would encourage, if anyone has ever, if you haven't seen it, I would encourage, reach out and I would be happy to give you a personal tour. I'm very proud of the facility that we have. We're also engaging in student education and getting feedback from them. And so Emily has been instrumental in helping and will be instrumental in helping us accomplish that. A little bit more about, well, actually, this is just a few more bullet points of our activities. It is not comprehensive. There is so much more. But one of the areas that we really need to work on is our scratch cooking skill set. So, that's an area that hasn't been needed because of our overwrapped food delivery. And so we're really increasing that skill set. So staff training and development is one of our focus areas that we're working through.
And Marcy, I'll interrupt you for a second and we'll do a little pop quiz.
Okay.
So show me on your hand how many lunches you think the Anchorage School District prepares every day. So in sign language, this is A, this is B. So A is 2,000, B is 10,000, C is 8,000, and D, point your finger to the sky, is 14,000. Ooh. D is correct. They got it, Marcy. I don't know if you can see them, but most of you got that correct. It's 14,000 meals a day. All right, keep going.
That's awesome. But to add to that, we serve over 20,000 meals a day. So that's with breakfast included. So we feed a lot of people, a very impressionable population. So we have an opportunity to really impact the community. Okay, so let's see. Yep, okay. So back to our scratch cooking. As you see, a part of the 32% of our scratch cooking capacity involves a robust bakery. We can produce over 7,000 rolls in our large rotisserie oven in one batch. So we have a very large capacity to produce lots of food. And it's beautiful. I love our homemade roll recipe. And we also try to get local flour when we can. This is also a nice picture of Vanderwill potatoes. We make our own mashed potatoes. Who knew? A lot of people don't, and I think we're our worst enemy in advocating for that. We do a lot of wonderful things. This is a little bit, yeah, a short video
Right.
of mashing the potatoes.
Yay, it worked. I'm so shocked. Well, it's working.
Yeah. So we
For
have a highly skilled cook area and staff that manage all of this equipment and run this equipment. For perspective, this equipment is almost 40 years
hang
old.
on, Mark. Yeah, there we go. Okay, now, yeah, how many servings would be in that?
So I couldn't tell you how many servings, but pounds, it's about 300 pounds of potatoes in one steam kettle.
Awesome. Okay.
So, in terms of staff training and development to help us continue moving forward, we want to know how other districts are doing this. And so, we had the opportunity because of the grant to take a trip to Boulder, Colorado, and visit Boulder Valley School District. And this is the birthplace of the Chef Ann Foundation. And they not 100% scratch cooking, but about 90% scratch cooking from this facility. And here we are gathered around as the team with their sous chef, and we're in front of their, I want to say it's a sous vide. Um, uh, I can't remember what piece of equipment that is, but anyway, he's telling us all about the production schedule, and we had the opportunity to really take away a lot of best practices in order to implement that with our team. But that doesn't stop us from moving forward. We don't have all of the answers yet. We're learning as we go, but the vision is there. So here is Birchwood Elementary. Ingrid is our rock star cafe manager, and she is an example of the 14 elementary schools that have converted to traditional service. So we're taking the overwrap meals, the 2 compartment trays, and we're simply serving it on open tray and implementing offer versus serve. And that is a National School Lunch Program acronym for letting the students choose. If they don't want broccoli, they can decline it, whereas they couldn't before. So this has really increased participation. Our participation in our traditional service sites have increased from pre traditional service from anywhere 7% to 30%. So that tells me the students and the families are really gravitating towards this, and they get to experience the food a lot in a different light than they have before. So, yep, there's another example. Another opportunity this allows for is drastic reduction in waste, both food and material. It was just atrocious the amount of waste of food that happened with the pre-wrapped meals, and so students get to experience their food, and they actually eat what they take. Okay, Emily, is this yours?
Yes. So the other part of the program is to increase local foods in the schools, and that's where the Alaska Food Co. comes in, and also Copper River Seafoods. Oh, by the way, so Alaska Food Company does freeze drying of foods, and they do. Some of their items are on the auction table if you want to check them out. They're awesome. So, oh wait, and this was so Marcy, the cultural meals. You can talk about that.
Yes, of course. We are proud to present once a month a um, a culturally inspired meal. And there's a couple examples through the slides. We have spicy Korean noodles. We have a traditional turkey and cornbread muffin and gravy meal. We're gonna actually next week have gyros. And so with naan that we've procured locally. So it's just an opportunity to explore different flavor profiles and expose students to different foods. In traditional service, having the student choose and see that is really an opportunity to connect the cafeteria to the classroom and the community.
Thanks, Marcy. And that's sort of where I came in. I'm helping to do some of the educational programming, just helping students become familiar with the foods and interact with the foods. You know, I was listening yesterday to both Melissa and some of the other speakers talking about connection to the food, and that's one of the strongest things that I've learned just in these presentations. So this is the overwrapped food unwrapped. And I can tell you, I was a teacher for 20 years, and you know, when the meatballs are delicious, they're totally delicious. The carrots, not so much. And that's because in the overwrap, you know, when the vegetable is paired with that meat and it has to be reheated, the vegetable loses the battle and becomes, I mean, face it, disgusting. And in my, you know, experience as a teacher and then also doing programming in the schools, when the carrots are paired like this, about 90% of them go in the trash. The same with the broccoli. It's horrific to watch. And so we're, you know, what Marcy's doing, you know, we want to make foods that students will eat. And how can we better do that? And of course, we also want to incorporate local foods because that benefits our economy. So what I did was I took an interactive presentation on the road and brought it to Wendler Middle School, and it was really fun to do. I got to meet with the students, pretty like 250 students, about batches of 40 to 50 at a time. And I used, if you're a teacher, you probably know the program Kahoot. It's like an interactive program. And I was able to collect a ton of data from the students about, like, okay, what do you think about lunches? Do you think they're tasty? Do you think they're healthy? And so one of the questions I asked them was, when carrots are cooked and reheated, do you eat them? And you can see the answer was no. I mean, for the most part. And then I asked them, when carrots are fresh, do you eat them? And that was a major difference. So we know that kids like the fresh carrots over the cooked carrots. And so what we were introducing was a different product. We were using Pam's carrots, which are local carrots from the valley. And by the way, one of the questions I asked the Wendler students, the Wendler Middle School, was, do you know, where most of the farms are located in Alaska? And I would say about half of them answered that question correctly. So there's, it was super interesting. If you know Pam, she produces this really high quality product. They're non-taste carrots. They're delicious. She does about 300,000 pounds a year. She used to do way more than that, but she's scaled back. And that the Pam's carrots were what the Alaska Food Company used to make these freeze-dried carrots. And one of the things the students loved learning about was that freeze drying food is actually, this won't surprise you probably, it is a traditional indigenous preparation of food. Back in the Andes, that with potatoes, that was a traditional way of preserving potatoes by letting them freeze overnight and then dry during the day. And of course, archaeologists have found stashes of these freeze-dried potatoes. And so they love that. And this is what the product looked like. And so we did these taste tests where we just distributed the freeze-dried carrots and we're asking them what they thought about it. We had two different flavor profiles. So one was olive oil and sea salt. And you can see that really, some liked, some loved. And then we also did a spicy elote, which they loved that one. Okay, so that was definitely the highlight. They were asking for more. And that, Marcy, that appeared, which ones appeared on the menu in February?
Well, we did focus, I think it was just the olive oil and salt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and did you get any feedback on that?
We were only able to serve it just because of the capacity or the amount to the 3 schools that we did the taste testing at. And we served it as a kind of as a crunch for the salad bar.
Oh, okay, awesome. So, I mean, you can see that, like, the freeze-dried carrots would definitely be an improvement over the cooked and reheated carrots, especially because obviously we can't have fresh carrots, although they store really well and we can have them year-round. I don't know, but freeze-dried would be an interesting menu addition. And then I also get to do farm to school activities. So this is somewhat related to the plants grant, but it's a different grant that I work on. And I'm able to go into the classroom and also do after school garden club with kids where I can, in this case, I'm doing like basic botany lessons using vegetables. And this is another way, I'm always amazed, like building connections around food makes children eat the food. So they love broccoli, they love carrots. They will try tomatoes. They got a sticker if they tried the tomato. And you can also see it's like integrating vocabulary lessons. So it's a wonderful way to have, education around food. And I also let them, be chefs. This was a lesson on stems and the role that stems play in plants. And the teacher that I was working with mentioned that, asparagus was her favorite vegetable. And of course, the children reacted to that immediately, like, oh my gosh, I love, you love asparagus, then I'm going to love asparagus. And then they also, they get to work with these kid-safe knives. They love chopping, absolutely love chopping. They will chop, chop, chop. And I told, the girl that made this, I was like, you are a chef. I've never seen asparagus tips paired with celery with a little bit of ranch dressing, and it was super fun. Like these are the activities I think that really help kids get more connection with that food. All right, Marcy, so I got to go into a few schools during the taste testing and meet some of these food heroes. I'll turn it back over to you.
This is Charles. He just hit a 5-year mark with us. He is also a chef trained professional, and he's at Baxter Elementary. We can't do this without people. We can't do this without people showing up and wanting to be a part of the mission. And so by the way, we're looking for more people like Charles to join us on this mission and share this message. So I can't say enough about the people, because if we focus on staff training and development, we put our people first. So that's why we've got this. He has an impact on every single student at Baxter every day.
Yeah, I can say totally in my experience, all of the cafeteria managers are beloved members of the school. And I'm constantly, I feel like when people see that overwrap, they're like, oh, the Anchorage School District provides disgusting food to children. And I'm always, it's the hill I'll die on. I'm like, it is really good food. It's really awesome food. That we just need to make some changes, just a few changes. And of course, that takes time and money, which is challenging, very extremely challenging right now. And thanks, Marcy, for letting me be part of your awesome crew. I've really, really appreciated it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invite. For perspective, this is our central kitchen crew. They come together every day and produce meals. I love, that's my love language. Professional love language is teamwork. And so I'm so proud of them.
Thanks. So we have a few minutes for questions. Marcy, were you able to hear that?
No.
It's how would a farmer get in touch with the Anchorage School District if they wanted to sell their products? And this is somebody from Palm. Are you in from the Valley? Oh, from Fairbanks. Okay.
First of all, I would reach out to me. And if you could share my information, I would just love the preliminary conversation. We're working with our purchasing department to work on how we can leverage more local.
And are those like the procurement contracts that are posted on the school district website, or okay? So
Yeah.
it's a very large school district, so there's procedures, but their requests for contracts are posted on the Anchorage School District website.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about if there are any current or have been any efforts to partner with the universities, like specifically with UAA with their culinary program or with APU with their spring farm program. I guess both for like bringing students in for culinary stuff, but and for education and internships, but also if it, I mean, I know the APU farm out in the valley produces amazing produce as well. And I remember last year at the end of the year, they just had a huge bumper crop of carrots. And I think, I mean, that sort of stuff could be amazing. I'm curious if there are any current partnerships.
So, Marcy, I don't think that microphone was working. You probably couldn't hear. So it was, do we have any partnerships with universities like UAA Culinary or with APU Spring Farm? Did I capture that? Okay.
No. No, but yes. I tell you what, this is a new frontier for our department. It is unprecedented. The Plans Grant is really putting us on the map and saying, "Hey, we want to start reaching out and connecting with like-minded, like-focused community people," and that's why I am here and thrilled to put it out there. Like, this is what we're doing. Um, and we want to become the people that we attract. And so we want to build those relationships, but this is a new frontier for us. And so we want to start that. We want to build that.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, it's, it's the largest purchaser of food in the state. Is that right?
Yep.
So it's not easy to incorporate small amounts of food. Marcy and I have dreamed about the three school gardens that I help with, we produced maybe 800 pounds of potatoes. And we thought, oh, how cool would it be to be able to use those in a meal? And Marcy, how many pounds of potatoes do you need for one school meal? I forget. It's
Well, we'll purchase at least 1,000 pounds, and we'll go through maybe 10,000 pounds in a year of potatoes.
So it's, for one thing, you have to have inspected farms. And then for another thing, it's just the quantities that they need are they're so big. It's hard to incorporate like small local producers unless there's a co-op or something that's
Yep.
developed.
Could I mention a couple of things about local agriculture and that connection with us? So there's a couple of barriers for all of us to be aware of. We have the money, so that's not a barrier. But how we access that, how it's processed, so there's not a middleman in agriculture. Um, Dicing, slicing. We've got a couple of vendors that can do that for us, but how can we access local more in the capacity? So Emily, you just mentioned co-op, like pulling multiple, farmers together that would do that. And then also demonstrating that, there's good agricultural practices going on. And so, chicken or the egg. So we're trying to make the first move and saying, hey, we're interested. And so this is a process of just learning more about how can we break down those barriers.
Thank you. I think maybe one more question. I think then we're out of time. Yes.
Marcy, can you hear through this mic?
I can.
Okay, just speak right into it then.
Yep.
Hi, I'm also with RoCap. I manage our food program for our Head Start programs, and we have a child development center in Anchorage. And we've often thought of partnering with outside entities to provide foods for our programs that meet USDA requirements, which we know are extensive. Do you have the capacity to serve other institutions other than ASD?
Great question. We have the capacity, but we don't have the capability. And two different things. We have the capacity to double our feeding. We're just so limited on our labor force right now that we can't even fill all of our cafeteria staff, and we're not even able to feed some of our kids in some of our schools. So unfortunately, we don't have the capability to do that right now.
Thanks, Marcy. Enjoy your Saturday.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Reach out to me if you have any questions. Love to chat.
That's funny. Yeah, please go ahead. Sorry. Is that out loud? No.
Oh, yeah. The green light on the bottom? Yep, good, okay. So it's a panel, so I guess we can do mics up here. Yeah. Do you want to talk on to the bottom? I can. Yeah. All right. I guess you need to come. There's a green light on the bottom. Hopefully, I'll try to get us to have 40 minutes of like chit chat, the audience. And I think I'm gonna ask everybody to raise their hand and tell us who's in. Fun for this person. For the versus certain words. You're gonna be a minute? I guess we get started since she says we don't have to wait for our. Yeah. Robbie with an I will tell us. And I think, yeah. All right, everybody. We'll get going here. Can y'all hear us in the back? Yeah? That's carrying. Amazing. Thank you all for being here for the second of two very exciting days for us. We're going to talk today about a program called the Local Food Purchasing Agreement and other approaches to local food purchasing here in Alaska and nationally. we're trying to save 20 minutes for Q&A. So no, if we get to, I guess that's what, 11:10 is 20 minutes. Somebody give me the old if we get going. I want to allow our panelists to introduce ourselves first before we get going. My name is Elliot Smith. I work with a group called Kitchen Sink Strategies. We help small farms sell to big buyers, and we help regions that want that to happen get prepared for it to happen. And we have 5 wonderful panelists. I'll do my best to speak as little as possible, but I'll pass this mic to you, and Christy, you can introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Christy Short. I'm with Division of Agriculture. I work with grants. I work with marketing. I also work with export. And I head the LFPA grant program at Division.
I'm Kaylee Eller. I work with the Tyonek Tribal Conservation District, and we help disseminate the LFPA award to the native village of Tyonek.
Hi, everyone. I'm Claire Marshalik, based in Seward, the Executive Director of Alaska Farmers Market Association. We work with 68 farmers markets, food hubs, farm stands, and CSAs across the state and kind of distribute LFPA through those outlets.
I guess, does this one work? Okay, came from this direction. I'm Robbie Townsend-Venel. I'm the Executive Director of the Kodiak Archipelago Leadership Institute. I'd also like to introduce Max Lyons, our Sustainable Food Systems Catalyst in the back. Yeah. You got a fan club, Max. And Max and I work together on the Kiktuk Food Hub, and that's what we'll be talking about today.
Aloha, everyone. My name is Saleh Azizi. I am with the Hawaii Food Hub Hui. We're a group of 15 food hubs in Hawaii, serving about 1,700 farms annually, around $20 million on all of the counties in Hawaii. So here representing that network. Good to be here.
Thank you all. We got a lot of brain power on this room and in this panel right here. So I'm going to be very brief to try and, for those of you that may not be familiar with this particular program or the acronym that we'll say a million times, LFPA, I'm going to try to set some context for it. Before we do that, it would be really useful for us to know who's in the room in terms of your role in the ecosystem here in Alaska. So raise your hand if you are primarily a producer of food. Cool, heavy on the producers. Raise your hand if you're intermediary, you're not a grower, but you help aggregate food or process food. If you're a food hub or processor, cool. Fewer of those. Who's a buyer? Anybody like an institutional buyer of food? We're all buyers of food, but do you work for a big buyer of food? Cool. And who would call themselves a supporter? You're not transacting in the space, but you want to see a lot more of that, and you're supporting nonprofit public agencies. Great. So a cool mix. We'll do our best to sort of speak to the breadth there. But just a little bit of context. I'm going to say things for 4 minutes about what local food purchase agreements were and are. Remember back, let's say April 2020, when the national news started talking about how grocery stores had empty shelves, and we were seeing farmers plow in onions or milk being dumped. That triggered the federal government to say, ooh, actually, turns out we should probably be caring about where our food comes from and how it's served, especially the communities that have low income or low access. And they created this behemoth program right out the gate called the Farmers to Families Food Box Program, where the USDA just put $6 billion into the food bank and food assistance world and said, go pay people for boxes. And so they did. They just got boxes of food that were very prescriptive, 1 serving of milk, 1 thing of protein, a couple vegetables. And in that process, the USDA realized, ooh, this doesn't really solve the problem of local food getting into those boxes or the systems that the food banks and food pantries are running. So when that funding ran out, they said, you know what, we should do it again, but we should focus on local producers and socially disadvantaged growers in particular, because those farmers are saying, it's great that you're putting money into these food boxes to feed low-income, low-access communities, but I'm not seeing any of that. And what they came up with was this program called the Local Food Purchase Agreement. I think it was late 2021 that they launched it. It was a big deal, $900 million total. And it focused on serving small and underserved producers and providing food to food pantries and food assistance organizations. So it's sort of like born out of that chaos that was COVID in 2020. Slowly but surely, the Federal Department of Ag understood the fate of small local farms is also bound to the way our communities are fed. Potential impact is huge. And it turned out that it evolved. They did it once again. They called it LFPA Plus. And then sometime in 2023, they said, you know what, this is actually really a great program. We want to do it for schools as well. So there's this other program that developed, the Local Food for Schools. We're not going to talk about that. Happy to answer questions afterwards. But there was a big promise made in 2023 to do local food purchasing again in the LFPA 25 program. This cliffhanger is it's not going to happen, and we'll tell you why in a second. But the program focused and gave two very clear messages to the marketplace and to our ecosystem, the people that are coming to a conference like this. It was focused on nourishing communities that struggle to access fresh, certainly locally grown food, and it was designed to support small and underserved producers at the same time. It's a pretty important and innovative change. What it taught us on the producer side, for those of y'all in this room, is that food assistance, food banks and food pantries can become a really important market channel, a place for you to sell your food. Whereas before, broad national programs that bought commodity products and delivered in major volumes never really supported small producers. LFPA opened our eyes up to the market channel for small and local producers. And so when the government announced in 2023 that there was going to be a big 2025 program, LFPA 25, we all thought, oh, amazing, we can keep building on all this. About 2.5 weeks ago, the USDA said, psychs, never mind, we were kidding. Actually, that's not to be trivial. That's not the words they said. It's even more unsettling. They said in a message that this program no longer effectuates the agency's priorities. Let that sink in. The USDA has told all of us this is not a priority of the agency. And so there was over $5 million that was destined for communities in Alaska to source from small and underserved producers to feed low-income, low-access communities. But that's not a priority. That's the landscape that we're talking about now. We're going to hear specifics about the program, the potential impacts, the proven impacts that it's had in communities across Alaska and beyond. But I wanted you to know what we're walking into now is a pretty weird and questionable future where the priorities that informed this very successful program are what we're arguing over at the national level now. So sorry to sober us up, but that's what we have. And I'm going to turn it to, I think, Christy, your slides are next to talk us about Div Ag and your role in the work.
You gotta be comfortable. I'm gonna just relax right here. So I'm gonna lean back. So this is a beautiful picture of the farm family of the year, Bruce and Vicki Bush and their family. Pleased to be a part of them. So I am Christy Short. I'm with Division of Agriculture. I basically provide the resources to partners to expand farmer business growth through LFPA. We have 4 partners that I mostly deal with, and half of them are here, so it's great. And we have been doing a lot of work with LFPA, with those 4 partners. I've got $370,000 in products have been purchased of 784,000. So there's still some left. There are 41 different communities across the state that are directly impacted by this. And we would have had another $765,000 coming in with LFPA 2025. Again, Elliot already said that's not coming, but we're going to make the best of what we still have. We had been told that we were not going to have an extension. We had to spend out the rest of our funds by June 30th, 2025. That has been lifted. So now we actually get to have time to accommodate our really short growing seasons, right? So we will be, next week, I will be working with USDA, getting that agreement set up so that we can extend our contract with them, our agreement with them through December 31st of 2026. So this will give us all of this year's current growing season and next year. So the only thing that we really don't have is any more administrative funds, but that just means that more money is going out to produce the produce boxes and food boxes that we've got going. So, and I just want to say none of this would have been possible without folks like Claire and Robbie, because they are the champions of all of Kodiak and then the entire rest of the state. So thank you to these guys.
Thank you, Christy and Elliot. So Alaska Farmers Market Association kind of took its own spin on LFPA. The division was so kind to give us some parameters, but then it was up to AFMA to figure out how will this work best with the farmers markets and communities we serve. And so throughout the course of our LFPA program, we started procuring food in summer of 2023. As most of you may know, our farmers market season is usually May through October at best. And so 2023, how much food can we procure May through October? First year, we procured around $80,000 from farm to food bank. And then in the second year, just 2024, we rounded out to a total of $230,000 in food procurement across 39 farmers, 7 farmers markets, and that was distributed across 12 communities. So we had folks in the Southeast, the far North, South Central. We even had one farmer on Kodiak do procurement and delivery. And so this program, similar to what Christy said, it wouldn't be possible without Robbie and I and Max. It wouldn't be possible without our farmers and our farmers market managers. We were able to organize models that were CSA purchases. So some farmers market managers went to their farmers at the beginning of the growing season and said, I want to purchase 6 CSA boxes from you for the entire season, deliver them to the food bank or food pantry of your choice. Other markets didn't see that as the best model for their farmers. So what they would do at the end of every market day was go to their farmers and purchase the remaining food on the table, leaving farmers with a well-rounded source of income for the 2023 and 2024 season. The LFPA program at AFMA has been seen as an incredible food access program, but ultimately we feel as though our farmers are the powerhouse of this program and we want them to benefit from these purchases. We never asked a farmer to discount their food. We purchased at full market price to make sure they were fully compensated for all the work they put in the field. And we also wanted them to feel like they were able to give to the community in the best way they saw fit. And so if the food bank came back and said, hey, our folks, our neighbors don't know what to do with a kohlrabi or even a leek. And so they would shift what they'd put in their food box and maybe just incorporate more carrots or more leafy greens, things that were more palatable for the community that they were catering towards. And so the freedom of this program did wonders for both communities and farmers.
Well, I just want to acknowledge that there's so much great work that was done with the state of Alaska's LFPA award, and there were many other tribal governments across the state who received LFPA awards. I don't know an exact number, but I know there are more than 20 tribal governments across the state of Alaska that received LFPA awards. So the Native Village of Tyonek was just one of those. And the way that we were able to disseminate this program really evolved over time. There are a lot of challenges in a remote community, particularly one off the road system, and trying to figure out for the first time, how do we connect a community who is disconnected from the rest of Alaska's food supply chain. You know, we have farmers, numbers of farmers across the state that are growing at an incredibly impressive rate of growth. But communities off the road system don't typically have access to that growing regional food supply chain. And so through the LFPA, we were able to kind of conceive for the first time of how to connect Tyonek to all of this other nutritious foods across the state that's being produced. Tyonek being very close, the closest off the road system community to Anchorage, has a lot of benefit in that we do have regular flights coming over. Compared to many other remote communities across the state, there is pretty consistent access to the global food supply chain. Of course, that does get disrupted. It's not always true, but we have 12 years of a local community farm, and we are the closest community to an urban center, or to Anchorage as an urban center. So we had a lot of benefits in trying to figure this out, but it was still an enormous challenge. And just to point that out, we have purchased so far about $108,000 of value through this program, but just through October now, we have projected to spend even more than that. And that's based on numbers because we have now kind of just finally figured out how to get into the swing of things. We're able to purchase food from the farm in Tyonek. We're able to, for the first time, calculate what is our true value of production to produce food off the road system in that community, and we're compensating ourselves for the true value of that food. We're purchasing from local fishermen in the community. We purchased meat from 8 whole bison from Randy here at Stevens Village Bison Ranch. We've purchased from more than 30 other producers across the state. So the way that evolved over time, it started by us just figuring out we needed to spend this money. And during the summer last year, I started kind of purchasing as much as I could from the Anchorage area, from various producers, and taking a bunch of boxes out with me to bolster out what we had available at the farmers market. And then through that effort, we had community members who would come and stand at the market and call their aunties and call all of the elders and make rounds through town. And we really figured out how to get it back to households. And then we've scaled that into doing bulk household distributions of bison and fish and pork. And we're now selling through an online marketplace called the Local Food Marketplace, where we're able to operate a weekly ordering system. We're aggregating in Anchorage, we're posting an inventory, and people are able to select what foods they want for their household, which we felt was really important, that we weren't just going to give prescriptive food boxes like many food access programs do, where households don't have choice over the products that they're getting. So we're able to finally offer that. And through the end of our LFPA, we're not sure at this point whether we will have an extension, so that will either end in October of this year, or we may have one more year to spend that down.
Oh, thank you. And I have to stand up. Sorry, guys. Twisting heads is hard to do. So, we have a little bit different story. Okay, is this mic going to work? So the local food purchase agreement program coincided with us installing and starting up hydroponics production in the Aluta grown farms. Can you hear me okay?
Get a little closer. Get a little.
Okay, and also starting a new large containerized hydroponic farm in Kodiak. And a number of our farmers are here, so if you could raise your hands so I can see where you are. So it looks like Moloch Farms at that table, and it looks like Port Lions Farms. And did I miss anybody? And of course, Max is in the back of the room. Max has supported this particular piece of the project almost from the beginning. So what happened was we were applying for a U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Native American grants to do the hydroponics. And they had a competitive preference priority that year of how are you going to support your elders? And we'd never really thought about that. We had been really focused on getting the soil farms established and, just getting everything going and the soil building and all the stuff that goes into getting, I mean, Tyonik knows what I'm talking about, all the stuff it takes to get soil farms going. And when this happened, we kind of stepped back and thought, well, that's a really good question. How are we going to do that? And we called Robbie Mixon because she was with the Alaska Food Hub at the time and talked to her about what they were doing. And they introduced us to the local food marketplace software. And we thought, wow, this would be really cool. We could do this all online and we could get distributed. We could get food into Kodiak or we could get food out of Kodiak into the villages, track all these orders. And so we set off on what we didn't realize was going to be a really big effort to make all of this work. We encountered some real issues. I don't want to go into all of them, but online platforms in villages have some real challenges. And one of them is internet connectivity. And then the other thing we ran into was syncing up LFM to our QuickBooks accounting system, which we eventually figured out. But anyway, and then meanwhile, we were working on all this, and then I think it was Glenda, who was your predecessor, came to us and said, hey, we got this really great program. We'd really like to work with you. And so we sat down with her. We met with our farmers online in our Alutigrown platform and said, are you even interested in this? And we all kind of scratched our heads. Sounds like, well, this is really interesting. You're going to pay us for their food so we can give the food away. It's like a win-win. Who wouldn't want to do it? So we embarked on this LFPA / Kick-Tuck Food Hub journey. And this is what we've done so far. And I want to point out that we signed our contract in June, but we did not start distributing until October of 2023. So we have not run two full years yet. And that was part of the integration of the ANA grant with the LFPA program and trying to maintain a clear line between when that grant ended and this program began. So in that time period, we've just distributed a little over 109,000 to our 6 farms located in our 5 communities that are part of Alutigrown. And you can see all of those up there. We are doing a small amount of distribution in partnership with Canna to Carlick, which is not on the map. And in addition to the farms, we were very hesitant to do protein because we wanted to make sure that we reserved enough LFPA funding to be able to fully support the farms. And then this year we realized that we can launch into protein. So we did our first salmon fillet distribution, and Max and Danielle Christensen spearheaded that. And we bought beautiful filleted flash frozen salmon fillets from a local fisher, Alutic fishing family, the Naughty Crew. And then also we helped support Old Harbor. They had their own LFPA program, but a tribal program, but they ran short of funds. So we were able to step in and help them support some bison in their community. What we're doing right now is we're looking at what we have remaining. And I want to thank Christy for her work in getting the extension because we don't have to do any of that paperwork. We just have to do our reporting and we really like that. So thank you, Christy. And I just want to say it's been really wonderful working with Christy. We had lots of what we think are kind of silly questions. And sometimes, well, can we do this? And sometimes we get a yes, and sometimes we get a no, but at least we get an answer really fast. So, which is not always true with federal agencies or state agencies. So thank you. But anyway, our plan is we're going to do a larger salmon fillet distribution. We only did it to the 3 villages, and Old Harbor got the bison, the 3 villages got the salmon, and we felt like we didn't have enough to do the really big list in Kodiak. And also the big difference between the 4 village farms and the Kodiak farm is the Kodiak is a big hydroponics farm. And they have got it down now, guys. I mean, your production is very, very regular. We've got recurring orders every week. I mean, we've got this down. And so a lot more of the LFPA money has been flowing to that farm just because they have year-round production. Port Lions is bringing a really large hydroponic farm on. We're hoping that they'll be able to participate before the end of the program. And meanwhile, we are having discussions about how are we going to transition. We had our first Zoom meeting, I don't know, what was that, last week or the week before? We're going to meet again next week to try to talk through, well, what do the farms want? And then are there other collaborations available within the region that even though we don't have this wonderful LFPA money, we'll be able to somehow keep the cycle going. So that's what I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Robbie.
All right, so stories from Hawaii. Even before this program came out, we had a law that had passed that all of our public institutions and schools have to buy 30% local food by 2030. So everybody was already looking for the strategies of how do we increase our local food purchasing. I'm not sure if you have those laws come here yet, where your schools have to. That would be great. Yeah. Um, and so right around 2023, so the Department of Agriculture got roughly $3.2 million. Sorry, the Department of Education in Hawaii. They weren't quite sure how to release this request for proposal. So in 2023, they came out with a request for information. So a lot of farms and food hubs submitted, what they were growing, when they're growing it, the various prices that are available. And at that time, it was still confusing for the Department of Education to know exactly how to do this. They hadn't, had a contract like this before directly with farms or with food hubs. And so there was a lot of back and forth communication between our food hub, Hui, and knowing what grows well in Hawaii and what we will have access to, and the Department of Education. Even before or right around they released a request for information, we have something called a Food and Funders Working Group. So it's a working group of a lot of philanthropic funders that want to make improvements in Hawaii. So they invited our food hubs and the Department of Education to one meeting where things were being discussed about how do we do these contracts, how do we design what became essentially food boxes that went to the community. And so I really want to emphasize how much work went into that communication process, because the Department of Education was going to release a list of 100 commodities that they were going to have every farmer bid on. And instead, it went from that to becoming, this is the kind of food box we're looking for, this much vegetables, this much protein, this much fruit, and dairy. And so it went a really long way from being a very, very complicated process to being a process that the food hubs could respond to, and at the same time, we know that we have the supply for. So we came together and we went in to bid for this opportunity, and there was only two organizations that bid in Hawaii. It was our Food Hub Hui Collaborative and the Food Hub, and a food bank collaborative. And we ended up later working with the food banks when we got this. And here I've written 15% of sales. So all of our food hubs together in 2024 generated about 20.5 million in sales. 70% of those money go directly to our farmers. And so we really try to make sure that our farmers get a high percentage of what the food hubs do. Many of our food hubs were created by farmers, so they value that quite naturally. The year before, it was roughly 18.5 million. So from 2023 to 2024, we increased by roughly 2 million for the 15 food hubs. So you see how large of an opportunity something like this is, 3.2 million. If you look at it as an aggregate, you're increasing our local food sales just from this opportunity with over 10%, almost 15%. And again, 70% of that will go directly to our farmers. This is just operating now, We started in February, and so we're serving 45 at-risk communities, and we have 13 participating food hubs in Hawaii. And so, yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, panelists. Yeah, round of applause for everybody's work. I'm going to invoke moderator's privilege and seed one question before we open it up. Thank you all for sharing that. It sounds like this program was really important because it was flexible and that it worked for Alaska's growing season and what your villages and producers needed. That it supported farmers to have a holistic and realistic market opportunity, that this wasn't so much a gift as an opportunity for sales. And that it supported more than that, the systems, like your community level projects, the food hub businesses that Robbie and Sally are talking about. At a time when we're being told future funding is no longer available, especially for you Alaska folks, if you could snap your fingers and wish for something to happen, to carry on this work, just dreaming for a second, what might that be? And why might, how can this room be a part of the vision you have? Huge softball question.
Anyone? Anyone? What do you got?
Do you have good?
I'm still working on it.
Yeah, okay. I don't know that this answers directly, but I do have a thought spinning in my head, so I'll share. And the thing that I keep thinking a lot about in terms of the loss of LFPA is that it really helped us try to round out the sustainability of Tyonik's food supply chain, that we have a strong local food supply chain with more than a decade of farm production and hydroponics. We're so close to Anchorage that we have something that many remote communities don't have, which is that relatively consistent access to the global food supply chain. And so with the loss of LFPA, how do we continue to maintain the access to regional food supply chains? And I think that's something that it provided to the 20 plus Alaska Native communities that received LFPA, who for the first time were able to conceive of how to access all of these Alaskan grown foods that they're disconnected from, that they're off the road system, and how do they start to purchase from those other suppliers, those local healthy foods. And so, yeah, if I could snap my fingers, like the thing I really want to happen, if we can't have the food provided for free forever, I want to make sure that we have ways to continue to subsidize the access. There's transportation of freight to Tyonik typically cost 60 cents per pound. And so the cost of local foods plus the transportation cost, how can we continue to, if not provide free access, provide subsidized access, so that with the cost of transportation and the cost of food to access the local healthy foods is still affordable and accessible in some way.
To build on that, yes, I agree. One of the things that we definitely have and struggle with every day is transportation. So if I could snap my fingers, I would have commercial kitchens built in communities. Yes. Available to the public. So publicly available commercial kitchens, and a miracle transportation route. I don't know what this is, but if it could just be something, wait, there's fingers being pointed. Wait, okay, let's talk. So that would be my dream, that those two things happen. And I do love seeing that the farmers are elevating, they are producing more, they're getting that their feet back under them, really. So I'm happy to see that happening. I want that to continue. I don't know how, but keep doing it, guys. There may be some export options available to you as well, so that you're not just trying to saturate your market. You can, if you can do some type of value added thing with what you've got, then make it so that it has a shelf life with the products you're doing. We heard in the last session about freeze-dried foods from Alaska Food Company. Maybe that's an option so that you can still just keep producing. Still, please keep producing. Continue that upward trend of growth in farming, and then seeing that being able to use that platform, getting export ready to build your market and diversify what your business is doing. So you're not just counting on the Anchorage School District to purchase all of your food. You're not just counting on one particular supplier to purchase all your food all the time. So diversification would be great on that too. What else? You guys got any?
I had a thought and then it disappeared. I think it came back. One of the reasons that this is exciting as an opportunity is that it actually provides one of the best market opportunities for our farms and food hubs. And before opportunities like this from large institutions come in, we have things like standing orders that allow for farms to start that weekly production that you were talking about. But going from a standing order to an annual order is a completely different thing. And it lets you really plan production. It lets you coordinate production. So that's the big opportunity of things like this, is to come in with these, not just a standing order, but here's my annual order. And now you can organize your food system. So if I could snap my fingers, we would have more opportunities like that.
Yeah, I already discussed briefly what we're looking at, but I just want to emphasize that every farm in the Alutiiq Grown Collective operates, they're independent and they have their own way of operating. For example, one farm, Marlene's Garden in Larson Bay, utilized very little LFPA money because they support their farm and they were already distributing food free to their tribal members in their community. They had this great little model because they have a fishing fleet down there, and then they were selling food to the lodges and doing boxes for the fishing fleet and having income that way. So I think it's a matter of the discussions we've started. How is each farm going to approach this? Moloch Farms is another different model. Port Lions Farm is a different model. So we see Colley's role is just to help facilitate the discussion, possibly identify funding sources that we can apply for collectively, or if there are individual opportunities, and stay in touch with Christy and the state, most definitely. And I think that I like what you said, Solly, about the farm planning, and that's something that we have really emphasized, and our food heroes in the back, Don and Donna Ray, have really helped us with that, with farm layout planning and succession planning, and Moloch Farms has that down, and I hear some of you are going over there to see that afterwards, and that's why they've been so successful with the program. So we just have to punt, I guess.
If I could snap my fingers, my neighbors would not go hungry. I think that this program is a hyper local program and serves communities how communities need to be served. We had a school in New Halen that thought they wouldn't be able to feed their students for the remainder of this school year. And so we worked with a farmer in Homer who butchered a cow, put it on the next flight out of Anchorage. It landed in New Halen. They stuffed their freezers and the kids have food until spring of next school year. And, we got creative. We worked with the local food bank to receive the food, to then process it, get it into their freezers. But this program has opened doors for farmers. It's opened doors for community food banks, but it's also connected community members who might not be connected to their local farmers. And our farmers are growing food for their neighbors. And I know their hearts are full. I've never met a farmer that has a bad intention. And so this program exists to feed our neighbors, but also to uplift our farmers and help connect them to our neighbors. So the dream, no one's hungry.
Any other questions? There's a lot of time, yeah? Right on.
It's more of a statement. Thank you guys for all the work that you do to feed people. I just wanted to really quick read the USDA definition of food security. It's accessed by all members at all times to enough food for an active, healthy life. And I think LFPA, what if I could snap my fingers, is that we put our money where our mouth is. If we believe in a strong food system in Alaska, it has to be accessible to all Alaskans. And this program and farmers deserve to be paid for the labor they put into the quality of that product. And this kind of program answers those questions of like, how do the most food insecure people in our community have food for a healthy life, and how do the farmers be compensated to continue growing? And so I hope as a state, I think it's an important thing to come up with programs that address the different pieces of our society and their different access to food because farmers are going to be involved in all of those because there is no food security without production, and we need to come up with programs like this and Snap Match to access, so everybody to have access to that healthy food for a healthy life. So yeah.
I went to Assembly of God colleges, and one of the things is a lot of times why we have higher education is because of Christianity. And I think a lot of churches in Anchorage are having problems now. I think like 4-H and that in churches. Like I have we have 4-H in my church at Trinity Presbyterian in Anchorage.
Thank you. Randy Mayo, Stevens Village Tribal Buffalo Farm Manager. Yeah, concerning, this particular program, we participated with Tyonic and, really benefited us and the community. But, with what's happened, what's going on right now with this current administration, across the board, is it even being addressed by all sectors of like the audience here? At what levels is this being addressed at? Is the congressional delegation, is there any positions or, um, you know, if food does not fit into the current administration's priorities, I don't know. To me, the top priority is food. So I don't know, there's no discussion on that here, or can anybody answer that? So thank you.
Can respond a little bit to your question. We know that Senator Cory Booker I think it's probably announced now, but are reintroducing a bill to make LFPA a permanent program of the USDA. And there's at least 7 or 8 other senators that have signed on to that. So as the Policy Council, we do endorse that, and we've let our congressional delegation know, but you all have a huge voice as well. So Rachel provides weekly updates to different policy pieces and bills that are moving through our state, but also we think we've added some federal stuff as well. There's a lot, and we have low capacity, but there is a bill moving through. So we'll make sure to give you some more information about that. Sorry to put you on the spot, Rachel, but yeah.
Just make that I live in Seattle, and in many places around the country, the state has decided to pick up where the USDA has left off. And there are very impactful programs that are state funded, legislatively approved, that accomplish the exact same things because states realize, oh, this is a really great idea for our farmers and our communities. So To the extent that's applicable, that is certainly an option.
Oh, I'll go real quick. I think I can help solve part of Christy's wish. If she could snap her fingers, she wished for free transportation. Right before I came here, I was at what's called a rehearsal of concept with FEMA Region 10, FEMA headquarters, all the private sector transportation providers in the state, food bank. A lot of folks were there, so about 150 people. So all of these private sector transportation companies donate heavily to things like the Iditarod and other high visibility nonprofits. I think we could take this panel and roadshow and go to a couple C-suites for Lyndon, Matson, Tote, and others and just talk about impact, importance, and that there's a gulf left of need. And in return, here's what we'll do. All the kids who are picking up their boxes will be wearing a Matson t-shirt. Every box that's delivered to a family will have provided to you by Lyndon or whoever. And we have a concrete ask and we get our pitch down to 20 minutes or less. I really think we could see a lot of funding support, but we do need a nonprofit because their investments are, for tax purposes, go to a nonprofit far more readily than anyone else. So I think we have something here.
Road trip?
I had a question on your local food purchase assistance at a glance slide. It looks like there are 4 different programs listed there. Are all of them canceled for the future?
The bottom 2 are the ones that the USDA announced most recently are moving forward canceled. LFPA that is currently active is allowed, as Christy described, as an extension being offered to the state of Alaska. Tribal, not everybody seized it. It's 1.5 billion with a B destined for local food for schools and local food purchase agreement 25 that the USDA says no longer effectuate the agency's priorities.
Ta-da! Are the LFPA and LFPA plus opportunities going to be available in the future? Not at this time. They've only given us the 1 round of funding. And maybe if there's enough voices, there could be more. So I guess if I could snap my fingers, that would be my wish. So currently we will be sunsetting this December 31st, 2026.
So with the absence of federal funding, and now I think we all understand that it's not really a sustainable model to expect the federal government to be able to prop up programs like this, what are some ideas that you guys have to take other creative options to continue programs like this without relying on money that we can't really expect?
I really liked the idea of having more state funding go to the Division of Agriculture. But I can't advocate for that, so you guys must do that. Anyone? Everybody's looking at me. Oh.
Where'd your mic go?
Yeah, I think it's with him. Yeah, I think it's a good question. And so this money is going to institutions to purchase local food. And so just promoting more purchasing of local food would have the same effect. I think, from a food hub's perspective, you shouldn't have all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, when it comes to markets. It's really important to diversify. And so while this is a good fund that comes in from many of our food hubs and may make up 5 or 10% of their sales, all of the other wholesale channels, direct-to-consumer channels, and to other institutions are really important. And that has to always be pursued, I would think.
Hey, I was also just going to offer 2 really low-hanging fruit policy issues that are on the table this year, I think, for the Farm Bill, since we're finally, hopefully, in a Farm Bill year. The first one is this, and both of these I would say I work with the reindeer herders out in Western Alaska, and so it's a industry that tends to represent a lot of the challenges that particularly tribal communities in rural Alaska faces. The first one, which was introduced last year, is the Tribal Meat Inspection Act of 2024 by Senators Murkowski and Senator Smith from Minnesota. Because the Farm Bill wasn't passed, it didn't move, but it would be reintroduced this year. And the purpose of that bill is to extend tribal compacting authority to USDA meat inspections. So it would be fully compliant and would have to go through the USDA approval process for inspectors. But one of Alaska's biggest challenges with sort of far off the road producers, in my mind, is right now our central office for USDA that controls inspection is in Denver. I know we had a couple inspectors in Palmer, but when you are not when you're not a sort of like a cash crop like beef, pork, or chicken, you have to pay the inspector to come on site, and that could be, if you're in a community like Nome or Savunga on St. Lawrence Island, you're talking thousands of dollars multiple times a year. So that would allow USDA to provide the funding for those inspectors that would be based in Denver to be tribal employees based in Alaska. So that's one really low-hanging fruit. The other one that I know is kind of getting complicated now is the bypass mail rate system, where I know we're kind of struggling to even advocate for it at the moment, but another discussion even beyond just keeping it is kind of lowering the wholesale requirement so that it doesn't just have to be large distributors that qualify for that reduced mail rate in rural Alaska, but it could also be small scale producers who maybe are based in the community and could then qualify for lower volume to still qualify for the much lower mail rate that's subsidized if that program can stay. But anyway, those are just two thoughts about policy permanent non-funded solutions.
Thanks, you guys. And this is just super fascinating. And I guess it's not really a question, but I would love to have captured, and to capture all the experiences that the folks who have been trying to and successfully implementing LFPA programs over the last few years. I think I just want to make a couple of comments. One, the administration of these programs is critically important, right? You can't distribute funds without people doing that work, and people doing that work costs money and resources. So to those of you that have been doing that work, thank you. And yes, and in terms of the federal government, we can't rely on. This nation has a long history of supporting domestic food production, and also at least working towards trying to have our nation not be hungry and having people be fed. Those are investments that this country has made forever, right? In different ways. I do think that leaning into the idea of where the state can support, I think that there are a lot of lessons learned from the LFPA programming in terms of how long it takes to stand something up, making those market connections, working with all of your different producers to understand what is your production schedule, what's the planning look like to provide different types of foods. And so, one of my hopes is that as a state, we can do not just the financial investments, which are really important to support our farms and our anti-hunger work, but also to acknowledge the time it takes and the complexity and the need. And Saleh, I really appreciated your talk about mentioning the Department of Ag and sitting down with folks and just getting in a room and doing some of that foundational communicating to get people on the same page of what is it we're talking about. How are we going to move the food? What kind of food is needed? How are we going to make this work? It takes time and it takes a lot of communication. So I think that's, I really am just grateful for all the work you guys have done. And I would lessons learned. What are your top lines? Make sure if you're going to do a program like this, right? If the state were to reinvest in nutritional foods to schools, healthy foods, that was a 2017 investment. Schools had a hard time with that. Right? You just plop in a bunch of money, and there has to be that foundational work done. So you guys have learned a lot. And and hopefully you can continue to do that, and also where we can pivot that into other investments and kind of learn these lessons and hold on to them.
Is there time for one more? Okay.
So as I work for Head Start in Alaska, Alaska Head Start Association serves thousands of kids a year, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program just opened it up that we could buy from local farms. We have attempted to buy from Myers Farm out of Bethel for years, produce boxes to kids, to families. And what we've noticed is, just like me, I grew up in the valley, and my mom served me frozen Brussels sprouts, and I did not eat them for 35 years. And trying to get kids and families to transition to the mindset of eating fresh fruits and vegetables and knowing and understanding how to cook them and that they don't have to peel a zucchini has been a huge struggle. So the education piece for us has been huge, because we were basically told, don't send us these food boxes. We don't know what these things are, and we don't want to use them anymore. So I'd also love to jump on the transportation bandwagon because our food sits out in Bethel and gets eaten by ravens every single month. So I'd love to jump on that call.
Can we get one more round of applause for the panelists, please? For all. No. Run. Well, I think we have a.
We have lunch soon at 11:30, but if it's not served yet, y'all should definitely bop downstairs to the cottage food fair that the Kodiak Harvest Co-op has organized. And Robbie Townsend said there's some pretty amazing kelp seasoned popcorn down by the Alutiiq Grown team. So she says it's free 99. So free 99. Okay.